Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying our building on the best summer school sessions that we've had throughout the month, and hope you continue to attend over the next couple days and next week. So today I'm joined by Andrea Williams and Eric McFadden from Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine. And they are here to share with us how they are managing their student documents with FormBuilder RX. It's our From Rookie to Wookie session. And so we're really looking forward to having them with us. They've been a client since January 30th, 2013. And so we've had a long time partnership, and they have been just a great partner in sharing their story and how they're doing things and excelling with FormBuilder RX to different levels than others. So just really thinking outside the box of how they can do things. And so we're excited to have them, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Andrea and Eric, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, I'm Andrea Williams, a Director of Technology Solutions here at the Heritage College. Eric.
And I'm Eric. I work with Andrea, do mostly Salesforce and ERX stuff.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so our agenda for this next 45 minutes is going to be focused on student document management with FormBuilder. So we'll give you just a little bit of background about us, what the problem was that we were trying to solve, our strategy to solve that problem. And then we kind of had a 3-step process to first design back in Salesforce, then do FormBuilder, and then go back to Salesforce to kind of design the administrative part of it. We'll go through some very lessons learned, and we'll wrap up with Q&A. Okay. So a little bit about Heritage College. So we are one college with 3 campus locations, virtually connected. We have about 4 cohorts. Our students are doing curriculum, usually in years 1 and 2, and then they go off to clinical rotations in years 3 and 4. There's about 250 students per cohort, so we have about 1,000 active student records that we're trying to manage documents with annually. So some of these document types that we built in this was managing our immunizations. We have some certifications and training. There's various attestations that our students need to complete, and we have background checks for our students in years 1 and 3. So this can definitely vary by university, but this is kind of what we focus on for ours as a medical college. The requirements vary by year. So if you're an OMS 1 or an OMS 2, 3, or 4, what you need to submit for your documents does vary. And we have about 20 different administrators. So between immunizations and certifications, there's about 20 different people who touch this process. And there's always a consideration around those students who don't fall into kind of the norm 1 through 4 process. Some students go off cycle, they take leave of absences, or they have to repeat. And so we kind of have to get those documents a second time. So that's kind of the background for our document management here at HCOM. So the problem that we were trying to solve was that for a few years, we were using our LMS. And as a medical school, we use eMedley. It's not a document management tool. It is intended to be an LMS. So students would upload documents. It was very cumbersome to administer because we didn't have a lot of good reporting. You would have to kind of look up each student record to know, hey, did they submit this thing? And it was a continuous having to monitor a student's record, and people would often take that information and put it in their own version of a spreadsheet to kind of see, where a student is on track of getting their documents submitted to us. And so the problem we were trying to solve was moving away from our LMS and putting it into a solution that was a lot better for us. So when we started strategizing how we were going to solve this problem, we tried to think about it through the lens of both the student perspective and an administrator perspective. So for our students, we still wanted to have that self-service capability for them to go into a tool and upload those documents. We wanted them to kind of see what's the status of that document that I've submitted. And as I'm sure you all can probably understand, something as easy as humanly possible to navigate, because students, they've got a lot going on, so they need something pretty easy. So from an administrator perspective, we had 20 some different administrators, depending on the document type they were reviewing. So we needed something flexible that worked for all those folks. We wanted them to be able to see a document that was submitted, approve or deny it, and then move on to the next one. We wanted them to be able to see all of the documents that a student has or has not submitted in a single view. They needed the ability to add notes, to give status updates if somebody needs to resubmit something. They wanted better reporting, and as well for our administrators, they wanted something as easy as possible to navigate. So this was kind of our strategy to this, and these were some of our kind of basic requirements going into it. All right, so our project plan, we started with the Salesforce design, and I'm going to preface the rest of this entire presentation with, we completely redesigned this already. So the way we designed it 2 years ago, we have already completely redesigned it based on some lessons learned. So just kind of bear that in mind, that we've already kind of gone through the hard parts of this. And it made sense for us to kind of redesign it, just because we had some performance issues with the way we had originally designed it. And so it just kind of made sense. So when we redesigned this in Salesforce, first we rethought what our structure was, and we'll kind of show you this in the next slide. Trying to understand first, what objects do we need to create? What are the fields that need created? Are there any flow or process builder automation that we need to include in here? What do we want our page layout to look like? And who needs access to what? And then we kind of moved on, once we had our Salesforce design in place, we moved on to the FormBuilder portion for our student portal. And so we created a list page and the student document page. And again, this was completely redesigned based on some lessons learned. And we'll kind of share, some enhancements that we made from the original process to the current process. So once we designed Salesforce and FormBuilder, then we kind of started hashing out what the administrative process would look like and some of the reporting needs, which often kind of leads you back to redesign sometimes, is when, once you've got, these are the fields I need, this is what I need to capture. Now we get into the process. You sometimes need some additional fields or triggers to help kind of maintain that process. So the first area that we focused on was the Salesforce design. And so this is kind of the structure. So all of our student records are a contact record. And so then we created a student document kind of master record for each OMS year. So for year 1, 2, 3, and 4, they had one master document. And then there were detail records for each document type. So for each upload that they did, it was a separate record, child record, to the main student document. And this was the large structural change that we made from our original design. We originally had just 4 master records and everything got loaded to that, which made it cumbersome to administer, and it just jumbled all the documents into one. So this was a huge structural redesign that we did, was we made child records from the master record for each document type. So IT here at HCOM, we create this each year. So usually in about May or June, when they're rolling over to their next cohort, we'll create, we'll take the year 1 students who are moving to year 2 and we'll create their records and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of a demonstration of what this looks like in our back end. And bear in mind, this is a test record, so we don't show any live student data. And so here in backend Salesforce, you see we have a contact record. And then here on the right-hand side, we have the various student documents. So I'm going to click on View All. And so you can see that in the backend, we have a record for each OMS year. So if I look at this one record in the backend, you can see that, we have some general information up here for the master record. Our background check and attestations, those are all on the master record. But here on the right, you can see the student document details. So for each document that they upload, there is a separate record. And so when I click on this, you can see the different document types, issue dates, expiration dates, and status. There's a few other things here to manage the process. And there's also the documents that are uploaded right here to the right-hand side. And so as these documents are being loaded and they're submitted, approved, denied, we also have at the bottom on the master record kind of capturing what the status is of all those documents, just to help with better reporting that, these are the documents that have been submitted, these is what's been approved, and so on. So this is the master record, and then these are the child records that are attached to each student document. All right. So the next one is the student portal design. So these were some of the requirements that we had when we designed the student portal aspect of it. And that was definitely way more Eric's side of it. He does a lot more of the FormBuilder stuff. But we created a list page that covered 1 record per year. The requirements vary based on what OMS year they are. As an incoming first-year students, there's a lot more documentation we have to gather, especially around like immunizations. Years 2, 3, and 4, we don't necessarily need all those upfront documents. So we needed to make sure that based on which OMS year you were, you saw and knew, what do I need to submit? We also, because those requirements varied, we made dynamic pick lists for each of those document types. So based on what year you are, your pick list of options for uploading a document reflected just what was needed for that year. And then we used add another section for the student documents. And we'll go into the actual portal. We'll kind of show you what each of these look like. So again, this is a test record. And so you'll see we have a list page that was created for each OMS year. It also tracks the academic year too. For right now, they're all test records, so it's the same. But if I look at my OMS 1 year, and I think this is where I want to spend the majority of the time, because I think the FormBuilder portion of this is where it really made this process work very well for us. So as an incoming student, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot to do, especially going into medical school. And so at the very top, we first and foremost have, this is what's required of you. These are the required vaccinations. We have suggested file name conventions. I would say probably 80 to 90% of our students actually probably followed those instructions, but I'm sure everyone can relate to that. So we have all of the required vaccinations, some, guidelines to help them know, when to upload that document, how to name it. Their required certifications. We don't want them doing this until August. So we have some good informational text that we're able to put on this page. And as you kind of scroll down, we have links to different forms, policies, checklists that's included here. So it also helps students have access to their resources. And when we originally designed it, this was one really long page, and it was really hard for students to remember to scroll all the way to the bottom and hit submit every time. So we had a lot of lost information because students would have to remember to scroll to the bottom and hit submit. Now, the way this was redesigned to have an add another section, when you add another and you upload a document, it writes it at that moment. So we're not waiting for it to be submitted at the bottom. So when I go to add another student document, this dynamic pick list is based on what their year is. If there are 1, they see this pick list. If there are 2, 3, or 4, this reflects just what's required of them. So if I wanted to upload an OSHA certification, put my issue date, and I upload the document. Let's find a test document. I'm sure I have somewhere. So you can see right now it's writing that record to the back end. So the student doesn't have to remember to go all the way to the bottom to click submit. This was a huge but minor functional change to this that really made a huge difference for the whole process.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, please.
And we designed the add another section so that the file upload field does not appear until the student has answered the other 2 questions. So they have to provide what the document type is and the issue date. And when they do the file upload, then the record is created. And we have all 3 sets of information, the 2 fields plus the file upload. And the file uploads are multiple. So if they have multiple documents as proof, they can upload multiples.
Thanks, Eric. So for each document type, they would add another student document. For background checks, our admissions team does this, and Eric did something super fancy here that makes this process a little bit easier for our administrators. And what he did was he created this password field that when our admissions teams puts in this password, it opens it up for them to add the background check for the student, the dates, and the actual upload. Our students don't actually upload their background checks. We do it on their behalf because we get a copy of that and we need to make sure we verify it and we approve it. So this was a fancy thing that Eric incorporated into here. Attestation. So there's just various things that students need to kind of read through and say, yep, I read this, I attest to it. And there's some different trainings. So here at the bottom, they can hit submit for all the rest of the pieces of information, like the attestation. And so I want to also take you to like an OMS2 record. So in this OMS2 record, you will see that the requirements aren't as lengthy as an incoming OMS1 student. So the way Eric developed this was based on the OMS record, this paragraph changes. So you can see that the requirements for an OMS2 is basically, let's make sure your COVID is up to date, your flu is up to date, and a TB screening. All those childhood vaccinations aren't required after you do that the first time. And so again, it's the same thing. There's some resources here for the students as part of a paragraph. And then for each document type, the student would add another document on here. They have some attestations as well. So I hit submit. We're just going to ignore that right now because it's a test record and I probably just forgot something silly. For an OMS3, they are going into their clinical rotation. So we need a little bit more information from them because we have to give that to their sites that they'll be rotating at across Ohio. That's another benefit of this process. So when they are in their years 3 and 4. They are not physically here on our campus. They are all over the state of Ohio during their rotations. So trying to get documents from them was even more cumbersome in their last 2 years. So this is, by the time they're a year 3 or 4 student, this is a familiar process because they would have done it for years 1 and 2. And we're not having to track down as many students to get this information because they're already familiar with the process. And so again, they have some additional certifications that they have to do and attestations because they're kind of going into a new experience. So they have a couple of additional attestations. So again, just based off of their year 1, 2, 3, or 4, these requirements change. And you can see also their pick list options will change as well, based on what year that they are. So again, one was—
You may have already mentioned, Andrea, that for the fields on the student document form, they have to click submit for those to be written.
Yep.
The attestations and such.
Yep.
But everything else, the file uploads auto right as soon as they upload the file.
Mm-hmm. And so we try to put that towards the bottom, the attestations and anything that would require the submit. We still have to put text in there to tell the students, be sure to scroll to the bottom and hit submit. And doing the add another section was a huge structural change that really helped the process because, like Eric said, it's writing the record once they upload the document. And the page isn't as long. The way we had originally designed it, the page was just really long. I feel like Eric and I seem to find the FormBuilder limitations sometimes. I think it's 14 sections because there's so many variables between years 1 through 4. We maxed out the sections, and the way we redesigned this really reduced the amount of sections we had to have. It made just performance much better with uploading the documents and so on. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through the back end Salesforce, the kind of design and structure, we've gone through the student perspective of how they upload it to the portal. Now, what do we do with these documents that we have uploaded to the system? And again, we've got a lot of reviewers depending on the document type. And so when we were looking at the administration part of this process, we wanted to make sure we had something that was easy for somebody to know that they needed to review something, easy for them to approve and deny it, easy to get to the attachments. And so we decided to kind of use dashboards. We off the bat decided we did not want to send emails for every document uploaded because people will just ignore the emails. When you're talking about 1,000 students annually and about a dozen documents per student, the emails would have been ignored. And so we wanted something that they could go to and they would know there's an actionable item for me here. So we created a dashboard, and a piece that really made this work well was a recent release that Salesforce did that had enable field editing from report, and we'll kind of show you what that looks like in the demonstration, but that really made this whole process kind of stick together. Again, this dashboard is kind of edited for these purposes because we didn't want to show live student data naturally. So these are, again, test records. So we created a dashboard that they can just change each academic year. So next year, when we're ready to redo this process, I don't have to rebuild anything. They just change it to the next academic year, and all the reports refresh to that academic year's records. I will also say that when we create the new records for the following year, we also mark the previous records complete so that they can't edit it, they can't upload, they can't remove. So you'll notice on our student documents, we have a record completed. So Eric built it so that when this is marked complete, that the record pretty much locks in FormBuilder. Everything is not editable. So with this dashboard, if I am a person who has to review immunizations, I have two reports. I have one that helps me look at what's been submitted that I need to do something with. And then I have another one that shows me what's the status of all my students' immunizations. So if I go here to the submitted immunizations first, you can see I have two immunizations here, and it's both for petulant pocket. And so the information that we see here is the document type, its status, issue, and expiration date. A fun little thing that Eric and I did was we used a formula we found online for a quick link to attachments. We were trying to reduce the amount of clicks for people. So we didn't want them having to go in this record, navigate around. So we try to keep them on this report as much as possible. So we found this cute little snippet of a hyperlink that you can use. And it just takes you to the attachment portion of that record. And because there could be multiples, you would see all the multiple records that could be here. So they would click on that attachment, they would click on the next one, and they would kind of first go through all their attachments and make sure everything looks good. And then they would go back to their report. And up here in this enable field editing, this is something, I don't think it was in the last Salesforce release. I think it was in the release before that. But when you click on enable field editing, it will then allow this little pencil to come up. So if I've reviewed all of my documents and I say, yes, I want to approve this one, I want to deny this one, then I can click save and it updates it and it falls off of this dashboard report. So now when I go back here and I hit refresh, you can see there's nothing left for me to do here. Now I know right now there's only 2 records, but I will tell you in live action, there are usually hundreds of records, especially in immunizations for our first year students. If I'm the person who's managing the certifications, then I would click on this report. Again, I would probably look at each of the different attachments first, and then I would go back and probably then update the status. They could look at the attachment and update the status as well each time, but this is just, my personal work process just to kind of get it all done at once. And so then when I refresh my dashboard, I might get mad because, yeah, it hasn't been quite a minute. This will fall off. And then so now I can see if I want to look at my status of all the immunizations. So you can see by year, by student, what's approved, what's denied, what's submitted, what's not submitted. That's where this little piece here at the bottom kind of comes in handy. It's a lot less cumbersome to report in aggregate from the master record than it is from all the detail records. So we created a process flow that anytime the status is updated, it looks at the document type and updates the status on this master record. And so in the report, you get a much cleaner, easier view of what's going on with these documents. And this was probably one of the biggest changes for our administrators, was using this instead of going one by one to each student document. And our administrators really, really like being able to get a 30,000 foot view of, for all of my students, where are they at with their documents? Have they submitted everything that they need? Before, everyone was using their own version of a spreadsheet, which is, of course, cumbersome. Now, our live student dashboard has probably about 20 different reports, visualizations in it to manage this process. But folks really appreciate that. I know which report is mine, this is what's actionable, and this is where I can check to see where everything is as part of the process.
The status of the documents is reflected in the student portal as well.
Yes.
So a
Yes.
student can go back and see whether their HIPAA document was accepted or not.
Which year it was. We'll go back to maybe the OMS 1 record. So now in the OMS 1 record, they can see this one was approved, this one was denied, this one was approved, and so on. And then I think if I go back here and I hit refresh, you should see on the master record, the status updates from the details to the master record. So you can see approved, approved, denied. So every time the status is updated here, it goes to the master parent record and updates it there. Again, it's just, that was a redesign we did when we got to the administrative process, because it just was really cumbersome to report on all the child records within this report. Oops. Here. So lessons learned. Strongly recommend detail records to separate the document uploads. And I will say, Mark told us that we probably shouldn't have it all on one, and we should have listened to him. But here we are in redesign. So Mark says something, he means it. We also ran into a problem with multiple documents to a single record. In aggregate, they cause size issues. We had issues with students scrolling to the bottom, remembering to click submit. And so when we redesigned it and split up the detail records into separate, each document into separate records, it uploaded it when they uploaded the document, which helped with that issue. Some FormBuilder limitations that we ran into, only because, again, we made it really, really long. There's, a number of fields you can have within a section, number of sections per page. So I highly recommend start with simple. The lengthier the page, the more complex it is for students to navigate. It's more complex for administrators. So that was a huge lesson learned for us, to just keep the page as short as possible. We also had a file upload limitation of 4 megabytes per file upload. So we put that at the very top of the instructions for students to, try to get it under 4 megabytes. There are a few documents, like if they have their childhood immunization, that might be pretty lengthy, that we have to work around a little bit. But when you're talking about 1,000 students and 12 documents per student, it's not very much. We might have a dozen or so where we might have to kind of intervene and help upload a document. It's not anything major. So those were our lessons learned, and I will hand it over to Misty.
Thank you, Andrea and Eric. We really appreciate you sharing this information, and we'll take some Q&A here in just a moment. But just a reminder that tomorrow we have our Prepare Your Next Application This Way session. And so our speakers are Matt Tate, Mark Farrell, and Reed. And it's really about how to sail through your application changes and navigate the galaxy. So it's you definitely don't want to miss it. And they'll talk about how you can utilize that with FormBuilder, assignment roles, ReadRx, and import for your next application cycle. And then what's the next? Next slide, Andrea. Okay, and so as you can see, our sessions left, we have 6 more sessions. So tomorrow is the Prepare Your Next Application. This is the way. Next Tuesday is Student Success, A New Hope. Thursday, Return of the Flows. And I know many of you attended the Flows Awaken, so you'll definitely get something out of Return of the Flows. It is an advanced session, so just keep that in mind. And then we'll do the closing ceremony. May the ERX force be with you. And the idea there is we'll do some award ceremony and the final raffle winners as we talk through that. And don't miss University of Alaska Anchorage on next Wednesday. And I think it's now time for questions. If you want to go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. I do see there's one there now.
I've already answered 2 or 3.
Okay,
I
do you
think
want
they
to
were
share?
all from Christy. I will summarize. She asked if we'd ever had issues with file uploads only happening partially. And yes, we did, particularly when we had one giant page with a file upload field for each file type. We ran into that all the time. I think when we were doing that, there was also a Salesforce issue that Mark and his team worked with Salesforce to fix. I mean, a page with a single file upload of 4 megabytes would fail in exactly this way. But we've not had that issue since the Salesforce fix and since the rebuild of our structure. So that's the answer to that one. And she also asked what we meant by each upload going to its own record. And I explained that each student has one student documents record for a given medical school year. And each of those records has any number of child records. And each time they hit the add another, it creates a new record that holds documents of a certain type. Each of the file uploads is a multi-upload. So if they have multiple documents, for instance, for COVID, they can upload all of those at once into that one child record. I think that was, oh, we have one new one. Okay. And she was just responding to my last answer.
Now it was a lot to digest between Salesforce design and the FormBuilder portal, but I will say I cannot tell you how much this has immensely streamlined the process, encourage transparency to both the student and the administrators on what's going on. It saved them so much time in tracking down what hasn't been submitted that needs to be submitted. It's worlds different from the old process. And so it's been very, very beneficial for us as a college.
I'll add that this is a student portal that we built in FormBuilder. It's distinct from our applicant portal that they initially used to become medical school students.
It's a great point. All right, any more questions? All right, so I did post the poll, so please take a moment. They would love to get your feedback and really be able to share that with them. So, and it helps us build our future webinars and summer school sessions. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that. And Andrea and Eric, thank you so much for sharing how you're doing this just inside of using FormBuilder. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great day.